So, there's a new Star Wars movie, and it's really mid. Now look, as a movie by itself, it's fine, it's serviceable. But the whole point of this video is that enough? Are we okay with that? This is Star Wars, and after a 7-year break from movies, the very first one we get is just fine? Now look, this is just gonna be a little rant about the new Mandalorian and Grogu movie, because I have a lot to say. And I'm gonna try to keep it concise, but this movie just really kinda upsets me as a Star Wars fan. For the last couple years, Star Wars has really been kicked around and beaten down by every bad and just okay TV show that's come out. And for this entire time, there's always been talks of future movies planned and canceled and planned again and canceled again. And it was obvious that it was coming back to the big screen, but I kind of thought it was going to be better than this. The Mandalorian and Grogu does nothing new to push the envelope of what Star Wars can and should be. And it's really disappointing because that's what this show was doing in the beginning. When Season 1 released in 2019, the series was already kind of tired after the sequel trilogy, and what made people so exhausted, I think most of all, was just the constant rehashing and retelling of the same stories that we've already seen a million times before. The Mandalorian stood out for telling a new, fresh story of the Star Wars universe, and now, almost 7 years later, they're making the same mistakes with The Mandalorian. And I'll tell you, a lot of the problems with this movie do stem from Season 3 of the show. Season 3 did a lot of damage to this specific series. So while the biggest problems I have with this movie in terms of its character writing and story, they do come from Season 3, but this movie is the final nail in the coffin of all of those things. Basically, all of the character development Din Djarin had is essentially thrown out the window now. Slowly realizing that there's more than just his Mandalorian creed, and finding his own individuality was something the show was building towards throughout its entire run, at least up until the end of Season 2. And it was all signified with the removal of his helmet multiple times throughout the second season. It was all in service of Grogu and protecting his son. And like I said, Season 3 had already undone this for the most part, but this movie does nothing to advance that forward. I will say a huge plus of this movie is actually giving Grogu things to do. He was a little bit more active in Season 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian, but Season 3 had him doing literally nothing, contributing zero to the plot. But while it is cool he's finally doing stuff, every time he does, it completely slows down the pacing of this movie to a crawl. He has 2 whole sequences where he just stops the pace of the movie to help the Mandalorian. And it's great that he's doing something, but does it have to slow down the entire movie? And then both times, the resolution to these two coming together is nothing. They both just act like it's a matter of fact, which is really weird because I thought the emotional core of this movie was the relationship these two had. This movie really feels like one really long episode of The Mandalorian. I've seen people say this feels like a couple of episodes mixed together, and that's honestly what I thought at first. But the more I think about it, the more it definitely just feels like one really long bad episode of the show. If this was like a 40-minute episode in the middle of a season, then okay, fine. But this is a 2-hour movie and the grand return to Star Wars in theaters. And it doesn't even feel like I'm watching a movie. There's nothing to be said about this. This movie tries to say absolutely nothing. And it's weird that this show has less to say than a single episode of The Mandalorian, because there's a couple that have a lot to say in just less than 1 hour. And for over 2 hours, there's nothing being said here. It's just things happening that I guess move the story forward, but this does nothing for the overall story this series has been telling. The day Season 4 ever comes out, I can guarantee you this movie will probably not be mentioned. There's that little that happens here. But like I said, I have a bigger problem with what this does for the franchise as a whole. This makes Star Wars feel so matter-of-fact and boring. And like I've been saying, for its grand return to the theater after 7 years, is this what we need right now? No, it's not. This just does nothing for the franchise. And I expect more from Star Wars. They're just permanently stuck in this Rebels versus Empire era. They need to expand their stories to a new era. Preferably, I'd love to see movies set in the far future. Introduce us to a time and characters that we have no idea who they are or anything about them, and they have no relation to the past at all. That's what I want from Star Wars. I want something new. I want it to change how I look at it. I want it to push the envelope for what Star Wars can be. Say what you want about the prequels and their execution, but at least they were attempting to do that. And I'd say just for pushing what Star Wars can be, they were successful in that. As someone who honestly does hate the prequels, there's a part of me that hates the Mandalorian and Grogu even more. And that is so disheartening considering these were some of my favorite characters a couple years ago. So to see them completely failed, it's just sad. But let me know what you think about this movie in the comments. I really want to know what everyone thinks. I haven't really looked at reviews or anyone's thoughts of it so far, except for just surface level stuff. So let me know what you think, and thanks for watching.